Ladies and gents, this is Are China, India, and Russia forming an anti-Trump alliance? By channel TLDR News Global. Okay, this is about the recent meeting that Modi, Xi Jinping, and Putin had in China. It's not about being like anti-Trump, man. BRICS is already a thing, right? So yeah, China, BRICS, that is the word acronym, is it, right? R BRICS, R Russia, C China, I India. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it doesn't help that all the tariff and things are kind of like, forcing them together. China India friction was high, and India USA was getting closer in past 10 years. That broke apart. So clearly, India is going to go to the next best thing. After USA, it's China. So it just makes sense, right? Out of like top four economies, first is USA, second is China, third is Germany, fourth is India. So we're talking about 3 out of top 4. Of course, they're going to go back and forth, right? So I don't know. To me, it feels like this is like a big deal than even people realize. US and India was getting closer before the tariff thing started. There are Trump's people that start to claim, oh, India is just funding Ukrainian war. Like, okay, like you're not buying uranium. Europe is not buying gas. What you talking about? You just wanted a thing to like go after India. Like you just broke the whole 10-year progress. So yeah, it is kind of anti-Trump, but it's not anti-Trump really. It's just like trying to find other ways to do business. That's it. Let's voice one.
On Sunday and Monday, China hosted the annual meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, in Tianjin. SCO summits don't usually attract that much media attention, at least in the English-speaking press. But this year's summit was somewhat of an exception, largely because it was attended by China's President Xi Jinping, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who presented a united front against Trump's America. So in this video, we're going to explain what the SCO actually is, and whether this is the beginning of a new and expansive anti-America alliance.
Yeah, the problem with Americans, I'm just not saying this is a criticism, basically, like, like, what is it called? This is like not as an, like bad way, right? It's like a good criticism in a way that Americans think everything revolves around them. Anything happens, apart from America is like anti-American alliance. That's not how the case is. BRICS is already a thing, right?
If you're interested in the political alliances and groupings that shape our world, then you might enjoy our poster, Every Alliance Explained. It shows, in slightly confusing detail, all of the world's major alliances and how different countries link together. Check out the poster by clicking the links in the description.
See, Brazil wasn't there. It was just Russia, China, and India. So even the BRICS, all countries weren't there. So it's not about anti-Trump or anti-dollar. But then again, whole creation of BRICS is about that, right? Like kind of going away from like US monopoly, dollar monopoly, which is a good thing in a way. Because in long term, if you stay at like US monopoly, it's bad for US as well.
So let's start with a bit of context. The SCO's purpose has never been entirely clear. The SCO actually began as the Shanghai Five, and it was basically created after the collapse of the Soviet Union gave China 4 new neighbors overnight: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Russia. The Shanghai Five was originally focused on the demilitarization of post-Soviet borders, and was essentially led by China. As regional instability increased in the late 90s, in part thanks to Afghanistan, the SCO, which was renamed after the inclusion of Uzbekistan in 2001, established an anti-terrorism unit called the Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure, or RATS. Today, the SCO is a confused mishmash of different bits. RATS is still operational, albeit only with a tiny force. There's an SCO banking consortium to encourage economic ties, and now an SCO university network with 54 affiliated universities. Nonetheless, this hasn't stopped other countries from wanting to join. India and Pakistan joined in June 2017, Iran joined in July 2023, and Belarus joined in July 2024. Today, it's one of the world's largest regional organizations in terms of geography, covering approximately 24% of the world's area and 42% of the population. As of 2024, its combined nominal GDP accounted for 20.
I mean, look, man, if China and India is involved, that automatically increases the number. So 42% of world's population doesn't say much. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, like how they would join over time. it, current meeting, I think people are taking out of context a lot. It's not about SCO itself. It's just an excuse to meet up. That's it.
3% of the world's total, and 36% if adjusted for purchasing power. Anyway, despite being a member of the organization, in the 2000s and 2010s, Russia wasn't a massive fan of the SCO. Many Russian policymakers saw the SCO as essentially a vehicle for China to exert influence in Central Asia, and thus as a Chinese-led alternative to the Russian-led Collective Security Treaty Organization, or CSTO. For context, the CSTO was essentially Russia's answer to NATO, a mutual defense agreement created in the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union, and comprised of 6 post-Soviet states: Russia, Belarus, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. The CSTO...
I don't think that's, fair way to say it. People like Putin never wanted Soviet Union to collapse. Once it did, they didn't want Soviet countries to join NATO, so they just created this alliance as like a thing so they don't join NATO. It's not like one answer to NATO type of thing. Russia has always seen itself as against NATO, point blank. Doesn't matter if it's in alliance or not. It just wanted something like Ukraine and other countries to not join NATO because of paranoia and things. But then again, someone like Trump, or even more volatile someone than Trump, could come along and just like abuse NATO. So like sometimes paranoia is not unwanted, especially at the global stage. You don't know what's going to happen. You need to expect the worst things if you want to survive.
Was led and dominated by Russia, which accounted for 95% of all military expenditure in the group, and was essentially used by the Kremlin as a vehicle for exercising influence over what they saw as Russia's post-Soviet sphere of influence in Central Asia. However, the CSTO has essentially become defunct since the invasion of Ukraine, both because other post-Soviet states are now wary of relying too much on an expansionist Russia for their security, and because only Russia really has the military resources to intervene on behalf of other CSTO members. But with its military tied up in Ukraine, Russia failed to intervene on Armenia's behalf when it was attacked by Azerbaijan in 2023, or on Kyrgyzstan's behalf when it was attacked by Tajikistan around the same time. In response, both Armenia and Kyrgyzstan stopped participating in the CSTO's joint exercises, and Armenia is now in the process of leaving the alliance entirely. You get the idea. Russia originally saw the SCO as a competitor to the CSTO, but with the CSTO defunct, Russia's apparently thrown its weight behind the SCO, which today looks...
And there's more to it than that. China is rich now. So yeah, Russia's like, hey, okay, I'm China as well. I won't be surprised if Putin starts to speak Chinese suddenly.
Less like a vehicle for Chinese influence in Central Asia, and more like a vehicle for resisting what the SCO see as American overreach. This became overwhelmingly apparent in last weekend's summit, when China's President Xi Jinping, Russia's President Vladimir Putin, and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi all used the summit to call for greater multipolarity in the global order. A thinly veiled criticism of what they see as America's hypocritical attempts to defend its waning geopolitical dominance. The 3 leaders were clearly trying to portray a united front against Trump's America, and...
See, the problem with all this is it's not about tariff thing. It's not alone that. It's how USA is doing it. USA is using tariff, and Putin is point blank saying it, like using tariff as a geopolitical strength. Like it's literally saying, oh, I'm gonna... Okay, it's like that gangster, Chicago gangster type of thing. It'd be like really sad if something happened to your legs or something type of way. Oh, by the way, if you don't do what I want, if you don't stop business with Russia, oh, I'm going to put tariffs on you. That kind of pisses you off, like who you're talking to. India's top 5 economy.
The optics were pretty remarkable. On Monday, for instance, Modi and Putin walked hand in hand to meet Xi, and the 3 leaders, who collectively represent something like 3 billion people, looked incredibly chummy, especially given they don't always see eye to eye on lots of issues. Now, it's worth noting here that while its overarching purpose has never been entirely clear, the SCO has always had an undercurrent of anti-Americanism, or at least anti-unipolarity. Way back in 1997, for instance, at the...
It's not about anti-American, it's anti-monopoly. After World War II, US has a lot of monopoly in basically everything. So people just want to balance the scale, because otherwise what Trump is doing would happen. Like if you don't do what White House is saying, you're screwed. Like that's not fair. So basically that's what's happening.
Shanghai 5's second annual summit, Russian President Boris Yeltsin and Chinese President Jiang Zemin co-signed a letter to the United Nations titled the Russian-Chinese Joint Declaration on a Multipolar World and the Establishment of a New International Order, where they announced their intention to strive to promote the multipolarization of the world and call for a more empowered UN. America isn't explicitly mentioned in the letter, but it's clear with the Soviet Union out of the way, both presidents were worried about the emerging unipolar world, dominated by the United States. Anyway, the SCO now overlaps heavily with BRICS, another loose association of non-Western countries that seems to be mostly about rhetorically opposing American.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing though. BRICS is a economical alliance in a way. SCO is like kind of different, like it overlaps, but it's kind of different. It's, yeah.
Hegemony. For context, BRICS is an acronym referring to Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. The term was first coined by a Goldman Sachs analyst in 2001, although it didn't originally include South Africa. But in 2006, Putin organized a BRICS ministerial meeting on the sideline of a UN General Assembly meeting. And in 2009, Russia hosted the first BRICS summit, which has since become an annual event. Like the SCO, the grouping has expanded over the years. South Africa joined in 2010, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates joined in 2024, and Indonesia joined in early 2025. However, the issue for BRICS, and by implication the issue for the SCO, has always been that while these countries might not like American hegemony, their other interests are just too diverse for them to actually organize any coherent opposition. And this is why every so often you see a headline about BRICS proposing some BRICS currency to replace the dollar as the world's reserve currency, or some new interbank messaging system designed to replace the Belgium-based SWIFT, but nothing ever really materializes. This is essentially because even if BRICS is united on the idea of opposing American hegemony, they're fatally divided on how to actually go about it. In this light, it's easy to dismiss groups like the SCO and BRICS as merely opportunities for geopolitical posturing, where global South leaders do chummy photo ops and talk about how bad the West is, but without actually doing anything about it. And, well, maybe, but the big difference...
I think the most problem with that is like China is probably thinking, why not use yuan? Right? Why create another BRICS currency when you can just basically use yuan? So that's where the friction going to start. There's no point of creating its own currency.
Today is Trump. Trump represents an unprecedented threat to both the global order and many countries in the global south. In this light, countries like China, India, and Russia might decide that the need to oppose Trump is so pressing that they're willing to overlook other differences that might have previously
Yeah, never give common enemy. That's the point here, and Trump basically did that. See, that's the previous presidents have always been like somewhat, wary of like how it's going to be perceived. Trump doesn't care about that, or see what's going to happen 5 years from now. So that basically gives other countries a common enemy.
Constructed anti-American cooperation. Now, when you're diving into complicated topics such as this, it's quite easy to get caught up in what you know without even missing a beat. But what about the stories you don't see? Or what happens when the stories you do see are purposely leaving out information to try and sway your thinking? Thankfully, our sponsor this week, Ground News, are...
Yeah, but go to original page link from there, support this channel. As far as this SCO thing, SCO is basically an excuse, right? I think it was mostly Indian excuse because with recent tariff thing and it didn't materialize to anything. It's still 50% tariff. So it was an Indian thing to like, oh, we have to have a meeting. So Putin, Modi, and Xi basically met. SCO is just an excuse. So it doesn't anything have to do with SCO, but it's just the meeting, right? If there was a BRICS meeting, they would have met there. And yeah, BRICS already has like, given statement that we are going to go anti-dollar now. I think they have done that even before Trump, but now it's just accelerated. And there's a reason behind it. You don't want monopolies like that because, okay, Trump is already doing problematic thing with like using that as a leverage. But imagine some other even more extreme president comes along who uses even more extreme way. That's a problem in itself. So yeah, this is why China and India can't rely on it because out of the top 4 economies, China is India part of it, right? So number 1 spot cannot bully second and fourth spot like that. That's the problem. Yep, there you go.